Hi, Lauren.
Welcome. Let's do this.
Yes.
So, Angela, like all good interviewers, I'm going to ask you a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about yourself, just in terms of the highlight reel.
So I'm a lawyer. I was born and bred in Toronto. I practice immigration law, mostly business immigration law. I've been practicing in total for just over 10 years, but I took some time off and I've been back for about a year and a half now.
Okay, and why did you get into law?
Well, really, to be honest, through the encouragement of my friends and family. Even when I was in high school, if my classmates thought something was unfair, they'd say, Angela, you go talk to the principal. We think that this should be changed. If you say it, I know he'll agree. And I think the principal kind of encouraged that in me and was like, okay, Miss Scarlett, what do you have to say? Well, sir, I have my 5 points and these are the reasons. And so it was just something that was always encouraged.
I could definitely relate to being drawn to social justice and just having injustice sit really poorly with me and being driven to change that.
Exactly.
So you're also a startup founder. Can you tell me a little bit about your company?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the firm is called Multinationals, and that's a little bit different to, rather than call it after me or name it after me, rather, to name it after the clients that I serve, because it's really about them. So they're multinational clients. They have citizenship in different jurisdictions, and their companies are multinational as well.
What's the mission of Multinationals Co. And again, the why? Like, why was it important for you to build this startup, Multinationals Co., that helps people with the legalities around moving around? Like, what was the impetus for that?
Well, I'm a big believer in personal freedom. Also in being able to really take your destiny in your own hands and achieve as much as you possibly can. And I noticed that people that succeed and do well, they maximize their freedom by having multiple passports and access to different jurisdictions so that they can go where demand is at a moment's notice. And I wanted to kind of democratize that and bring that to more people and more companies.
So it sounds like it's about creating autonomy as well as resiliency.
That's exactly.
And I know in a previous conversation we talked about, how COVID was a big wake-up call for everyone, that things can change on a dime.
Yes.
It could be like, hey, we're in lockdown. Hey, we are on draconian rule now.
Yes,
like,
yes. And thank you for bringing that up because I wasn't sure if I should, but COVID really had an impact on my thinking in that way. When I saw how the world shut down immediately and people that were not necessarily very wealthy had their options limited, because the clients that I had that did have money and the friends that I had that did have a good sum of money left and went for greener pastures immediately. And I wanted to be able to help other people do that as well. And to really, as you said, maximize freedom and autonomy and protect civil liberties. So
yeah, that's a very valiant cause. And for me too, like looking at the issues with climate change and geopolitical tensions, I feel like everyone needs a plan B.
Yeah.
It's definitely a good thing to have. Not to mention the options it opens up in terms of business, right? For me, if I could get USD dollars and clients, like that would be a game changer as a Canadian entrepreneur.
Yes.
Or even expanding into Europe, into the Arab states, into China, into these huge markets.
Yes.
We're in a global society, so having a Sherpa like yourself to guide us through these very, very complex transitions of new passports, new citizenship policies, and the intricacies of different countries and their policies sounds really useful.
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
In terms of what you're doing, what kind of impact do you hope to have, first of all? And tell us where you're at right now in your startup journey.
So what type of impact do I hope to have? Again, I really want to democratize the access to wealth and the access to personal civil liberties. That's my whole mission. I want to really take it away from just being an elite type of thing to making it more widespread, and especially for Black people and Black women. Black women generally have high rates of entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. The highest.
Yes, the highest. And sometimes that's through necessity, because facing obstacles in the job market.
Yeah.
And so we end up going out on our own, and sometimes it's a mixture of both necessity and ambition. You want to be your own boss, you know. So yeah, that is really my mission, to be another tool in your toolbox on the way to your goals.
Awesome.
To save people time and the time that you waste on making mistakes and trying to figure things out. I've got you.
What stage are you at in building out your business?
So again, I'm at the beginning, really. I took some time off, a number of years off for medical reasons. So I'm really at the beginning. A lot of things have happened, and I find it very interesting this time around. I've developed a lot of strategic partnerships, and so, for example, one of them is with an AI-powered recruitment platform. And so, and it's very, very new, so I won't talk too much about it, but it's going to change the game in terms of recruiting and global recruiting. So that's one. I've connected with different lawyers in jurisdictions, Mexico, the USA, Portugal. I'm looking at Eastern Europe right now as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of company building is just those strategic partnerships, building out your client base, building out your list of vendors and referral partners. And of course, a good business plan. I recommend that everyone incorporate ASAP, because a lot of the financing options for your business is going to be based on how old your company is. So even if you don't have everything figured out perfectly, register the business, get that name registered. And the longer that legacy exists, the longer your bank accounts exist and so on, is the better you'll be set up, even if you don't plan to launch on a large scale for the next year or so.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I tell my clients to incorporate immediately or as soon as possible, especially when you're applying for grants. A lot of times the grant, the people that are offering the grants, they want you to be incorporated, and just to have that extra step. You have an accountant, get incorporated, get your corporate bank account. And,
yeah, and
business
all the
plan,
banks
of
are
course, as
very
you said.
happy to help you open a bank account. Okay, so let's move on to the more sort of nitty-gritty of leveraging your expertise and sharing some things about what may happen and what has happened indeed to you personally when navigating legal considerations. And if you could talk a little bit about your personal experience of how legal considerations have impacted your business journey, either positively or negatively.
Well, with me personally, being a lawyer, I haven't had too much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of my friends are lawyers, so that's kind of convenient. But in terms of clients, I've seen different things. And I've seen how maybe not having information at the ready has impacted them. For example, I'm thinking of one client, let's say he has because I want to change up. So he has a laundromat business that he's going into with his friends, right? And the shareholders agreement wasn't drafted properly. A lot of things were, I think they went to the law firm of Google, right? And then they went to a lawyer who did not have expertise in that area of law and was doing something very, very different. And unfortunately, that counsel didn't, go get the advice of somebody else who had expertise, and therefore the shareholders agreement said a lot of conflicting things. At one clause it said this, but then the next clause said the opposite. Like they basically just cut and paste.
So what do you do in that situation? Like you have a junk shareholder agreement, you have two people that are part of the company.
It was actually 5 people, and
5.
Yeah, and
that's even crazier.
Yeah, they started to have disagreements, and then when they came to me it was quite a thing, because I explained to them what the situation was, and basically this is not really good for anything, and did anyone get independent legal advice? Unfortunately, nobody.
So it wasn't valid to begin with?
I had to tell them that it wasn't valid, and so I offered to redo it for them, and of course I told them to get independent legal advice. I'll draft it, of course, a multi-party retainer and all that. But so it ended up working out, thankfully. But yeah, it was quite stressful for them in the beginning, because they're like, oh, I thought it said this, I was counting on this. And so,
setting up your company structure properly is so key, because most companies, they don't last more than 5 years.
Yes.
A lot of the strategy for founders is not to hold on to that company forever and ever and maintain these partnerships forever, but to eventually get bought out or to get acquired. So these things can inhibit your ability to get bought out or acquired.
That's right.
And it can also put you in a different and special kind of hell when you're trying to, break up with your fellow founders. In fact, my lawyer, Lauren, she's excellent, but when she drafted the shareholder and corporate structure agreement with my company, it was me and my intimate partner as well as business partner. And she says,
that can be a little tricky.
Hey, this could go really well or really, really badly.
That's
and
right.
she recommended something called a shotgun clause.
Yes.
And that's when someone wants out, you get the option to either buy them out at what a fair price would be.
That's right.
Or assign it to someone else, but it's basically like one person gets 100% of the company, or you just sell the company.
That's right.
And
then
you can't drag it out through the courts forever.
Yeah. Right of first refusal and
exactly.
all of that.
Yeah, so I thought that was a really good clause. What she also did, everything was written as he, him in the contract, which is typical. And I said, hey, can you either change that to all she, or if you want, you can alternate.
Yeah, or gender neutral, right?
Yeah,
they,
she just did she, him in alternating ways, right? But it kind of made her realize how ridiculous it was. And it was like, why don't you change it to all she? See how that feels, right? My next question really pertains to Black women in particular. What are some of the biggest legal concerns Black women entrepreneurs face when starting and running their own business? Is there anything separate that they might have to deal with than the general population, or not really?
In terms of legal concerns, I don't think there's something specific to Black women. I think that it's good for all entrepreneurs to make sure that their intellectual property is protected through different mechanisms, patents, software patents, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an important thing. I know that costs can be prohibitive sometimes. So I think that a solution to that, as we've had in private discussions, is to align yourself with a good incubator, such as the BFN. And there's many others as well that will help you offset those costs, or at least get you legal counsel, sometimes free or less expensive.
Yeah, there's a lot of extra subsidies, grants, programs specifically designed for Black female founders if they are 51% ownership or above. And I think it's worth mentioning as well that Black women have a tendency to trust and to really want to help everyone in their community, give their sister a job, give their brother a job, their mom, their dad, their cousin, whatever, right? And their kindness can sometimes be taken advantage of, and it can be very hard to manage people that you work with that you also have personal relationships with. So it's important to draw boundaries, I think, and to not trust so much, right? Just because someone says, okay, yeah, you can trust me with a handshake. Like, no, I need everything in writing. I need my lawyer to look at this contract before I sign it, or I need to properly review the contract, and to really give people that extra layer of due diligence before working with them as a vendor, as a client, as whatever it may be.
Yes, and it's funny that you brought up due diligence, because that's something that came up again with the first example that I brought up. They had a few problems, but anyway, when you're choosing your founding team, do a due diligence report on everybody, because you don't know necessarily everything that's gone on in their past, whether they have past judgments against them, and that can affect not only your money but your reputation. If you choose the wrong people to found with, the banks are going to look at you like, maybe your judgment isn't that good. Possible other investors might think, how good could your judgment be if you're choosing this person as your founder? You know what I mean? So it impacts a lot.
Yeah, there's definitely bad actors out there who will say, hey, I'm looking for a CEO for my company. Will you be it? And they just met you, right? It's like, what are their motivations for that, right? Why don't you want to be CEO of your own company?
That's right.
And, maybe they're just using you to get access to these other grants and benefits of having a Black woman in a leadership position.
That happens a lot. If you want to do that and you get a good deal and it's advantageous to you to do that, but know what you're getting into. Don't let people use you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's fair. And so why is building a strong legal foundation crucial for the success of any Black-owned business in today's climate?
As I said, times are changing, and the world is a smaller place, and it's harder to travel, it's harder to do cross-border business, and so you have to have a strong legal foundation. We already mentioned the fact that to get funding and opening bank accounts, you know what I mean? If you don't have a strong legal foundation, people will judge you by that. And often people will come to the lawyer first, and it might be a little counterintuitive to some people, but actually go to your accountant first. Because your accountant will have a good idea of what you have, what you don't have, what you can get, and how you should structure your business. And it's usually the accountant that speaks to the lawyer and says, okay, based on this, based on the tax code, and for these reasons, I think that they should do this. What do you think, lawyer? And then we'll say, yeah, I think da-da-da-da.
Yeah. And even stuff like where you choose to domicile your corporation. For instance, if you choose to register your business in Alberta, if you know that you don't need to be like all over the place with your company, like if it works for you to domicile in Alberta, you're at a much lower tax bracket, for instance. Or if you domicile in the states like Delaware, you're in the very lowest tax bracket. Exactly. But that may then limit your ability to take advantage of Canadian grants and programs, right? That's right. One benefit may negate a different benefit, so it's important to weigh those things.
That's exactly it. And that's why I say start at your accountant. And then also, if you're incorporating in Ontario and you're from outside of Canada, right? You can incorporate either in Ontario or BC, because those are the only two provinces that allow foreign-owned companies. Besides, federal, if you have 25% of the directors Canadian. So
interesting.
Try not to give legal advice, but
right. Yeah. So Angela is not allowed to give general legal advice. So we're going to do a disclaimer. Yeah. None of this should be considered legal advice. Please consult your lawyer directly with your particular concerns. Okay. With that said, let's move on to the topic of IP and protecting intellectual property. I myself have fallen prey to not using an NDA, to not protecting my intellectual property properly, because when I did look up, what a patent's going to cost me or what it's going to cost me to trademark, it's like $1 million. It's not $1 million, but it felt like $1 million as a new founder. Sure, and it's like, well, do I need this yet, right? Am I really anything yet? And so I think that the answer to this question might depend, right? Are you patented new chemical? Did you create something on the periodic table, right? By the way, a Black woman produced the newest element on the periodic table.
Oh, wow.
Go team. Yeah, the first one lately, indeed. So in her case, she would want to do that. In the case of people in STEM, biosciences and so on, they would want to do that. maybe even if it's just a new technology, right? But so the question is, what key steps should one take to protect their IP in terms of trademarks, copyrights, and patents? And how do you balance the cost of that with the growing needs of your business? Because we know that these things aren't cheap either.
No, they're not cheap. And we mentioned that it's good to align yourself with a good business incubator, because often they can help with that. They will give you access to lawyers at either a discount or for free, depending on the incubator. I'm not an IP lawyer. I have IP lawyers that work with the firm. IP is a special thing unto itself. People spend many years getting their expertise in that area of law, so I can give just general, very light advice. There are a number of websites. If you go to the Canada Business website, there are links to, I think it's called the Canadian Intellectual Property Office, and they will give you like tutorials and instructions on how to maybe file a patent on your own until you can get that kind of expertise. Also, if you have a unique name, for example, just on a practical level, like this isn't necessarily legal, but more kind of practical business advice, I'm like, get that URL right away, incorporate in that name right away. So if ever there is a dispute with some big company saying, we own that name, you might not have a trademark, but you can say, but it's been incorporated under that name and a federal corporation in Canada since 2019, and therefore I have a greater claim. So anything that you can do practically to kind of put your stake in the ground and say, this is mine, until you can get that money rolling in, just do it. Get all that social media out there with that name,
leave a paper digital trail. Yes, and that makes sense too from, again, a corporate naming perspective. You have to go through the nuance name search, where you're not even allowed to incorporate under that name if it's too similar to another existing corporation. That's right. So that's a good way to know if you're on the right track. But again, that's only for Canada, right? So you can still accidentally step on toes outside of Canada. It's possible to do broader searches to include the United States and Europe on your business name. Again, just starting with Google and going down that rabbit hole to see if there could be a conflict with the naming or a confusion of products. That's right. So, I mean, there is resources you mentioned, the Canada Business website. I think Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada, I said, would be a good resource as well. And the different incubators likely have people on hand, on staff, IP lawyers that could give you guidance as well.
For sure, in the Canadian Intellectual Property Office.
Moving on to contracts and agreements. What key elements should Black women entrepreneurs ensure are included in contracts with clients, vendors, and or employees? Maybe just pick like 3 elements to definitely include. I would definitely have a termination clause in there. That would be my first. Again, start with the exit in mind. And then, of course, for me, again, it would be a non-compete of sorts. Or like, you can't poach my talent, or you can't steal my clients, that kind of ownership type stuff. But what else would you recommend?
Well, those are, you stole my first 2. So
sorry.
That's okay. Besides that, well, especially with employees, a clause to protect your trade secrets, that's like NDA, a probationary period clause where you can say within 3 months we can let you go, no problem. It really depends on the industry. When you start to get into the nitty gritty, it's just the usual, your pay, your time off, what happens if you're sick, what you can and cannot do on social media. Now we have
that's a good one.
Right, now we have to think of that. So, and similarly, like with clients, to outline clearly what the duties are, like what you are going to provide, and what the remedy is if that is not provided within a certain amount of time, to really put numbers and dates and make them concrete.
Yeah.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah. How can we avoid like common pitfalls in terms of negotiating and signing contracts, especially those with limited legal experience? Like, what are some obvious, roadblocks or issues that may come up for you?
Well, people often cite the NDA as, very important in terms of when you're negotiating with somebody and you have to share your trade secrets during the negotiation. That is very true, but also you have to kind of back up, because do you have the money to sue somebody if they contravene the NDA?
Indeed.
Like, maybe not. So take a lot of time to do your due diligence with the party that you're trying to contract with, and so the NDA doesn't become an issue, right? So try to do practical things to safeguard against the legal necessities is what I would really stress. Yeah.
Would you recommend any of those prefabricated templates or contracts?
If you're taking them to a lawyer, and I'm not saying this because I am a lawyer, I'm just...
I'm not just trying to preserve my income or whatever, yeah.
I'll tell you the real deal, okay? Angela's real. So, because even the story that I started off with, right? And that's not the first time it's happened. So if you want to, if you're going to get a template, get it from your incubator. And then once you get it from your incubator, you can bring it to a lawyer, and it will be less cost for you, because then we'll just check it, right? And no, you're going to get ripped off here. You got to watch out for this. You got to, how are you going to get out of this if this doesn't happen? We'll ask you all the questions depending upon the industry. And so that's a good way to kind of offset the costs. But make sure it's a good template, because if it's a really bad one and we end up rewriting it anyway, it's going to...
Agreed. Yeah, I think using one of those templates kind of gives you a false sense of security, like, oh, this is a legal contract, right?
Yeah.
I got from Law Depot or whatever.
Yeah, not so much.
And it's like, not so much. Or even AI-generated contracts are a thing, right? And you might think, okay, this is a good start, or this covers my bases, but would it hold up in court? And do you want to go to court? This kind of goes back to having some kind of insurance, I think, right? That
yes, insurance.
There's like errors and omissions insurance, which would cover your legal fees if you did need to drag a vendor, employee, client, et cetera, to court, or if someone's trying to sue you.
And that's the thing, let's be real, not everybody's going to start off with having the full package of insurance and all of that. If you're dealing with food services or something to do with the body, like beauty, putting eyelashes, I would recommend that you have insurance immediately. But say you're manufacturing shoes or something, you might...
Or like, for instance, there's this, I came across an article about a manufacturer in the UK of cookies. And they were sold at like a grocery store in the United States. And there was a girl that had horrible peanut allergies. Oh. And they did not list peanuts on the label. This poor girl, she was in her early 20s, dead. Wow. She's died. Wow. You can bet her family is going to come for them.
That's right.
In a serious way.
No excuse.
And for good reason, of course, right? They paid the ultimate price. So that business, like,
I hope they have
I sure hope they have insurance, and that they properly label their
from now on.
From now on.
Well,
yes.
I don't. Yeah. They'll be out of business.
But yeah, that's just one example. If you're doing anything consumable, anything that's topical, anything that has to go through the health and protection services, then definitely that. Let's move on to compliance and regulations. So there's always like law changes to regulations. How can entrepreneurs stay informed about these things and how they might impact their own businesses?
Okay, so again, that's very industry specific. So if you're a member of different professional associations. Usually they will have a sign-up newsletter that you can sign up for. So if there's a food manufacturers association and you sign up, right, and they will let you know about those different things. So it's good to join different professional associations according to whatever
good call
industry.
Good. I think good governance on your board is important as well. Like, for instance, if you're in the biotech space, maybe you're a student group, but having someone on your board of director that is in a position of regulatory compliance or has expertise in that area can help you internally stay on the right track, and you can sort of check things against them. So really building out a board of advisors that has a component, at least one person should have that regulatory expertise.
Yes, great point. And that's something that's very important too. Like, start with your accountant, then your board of advisors, then your lawyer, because the board of advisors really makes or breaks your industry, your venture, rather, and it's very, very important. They will have the connections that you need. They will have the expertise, as Laura said, that you need, and save you a lot of time.
How can we advocate for policies at like a government level that are supportive and equitable for Black-owned businesses? Like, how do I lobby the government for more equitable and beneficial Black-owned initiatives?
I think that, holistically speaking, we as Black people have to get more involved in government. First of all, run for whatever, even if it's for the school board. That's important. Right. So when we're there, we can appreciate, what we need. And so when somebody comes to advocate, we have a member of our own community there that can explain to the rest of their team why this is important, because sometimes that doesn't always translate unless somebody is there in the position. Also, there's organizations like the Black Founder Network and other organizations, more I guess politically minded organizations that we can join. There's the Black Business and Professionals Association, the ACBN, Nobellum, even, any kind of organization, because once we're together in groups, we exchange information, right? I could join Nobellum, which is your organization, and not even know that somebody is also like a member of parliament that is connected, or somebody's sister's brother's cousin. That's how we get together. Just get tapped in anywhere. And
everywhere.
And everywhere.
And everywhere. There's no limit. I absolutely agree. I was at the Procurement Canada Diversity Expo, and I got a chance to talk to the head of the BBPA, and FOSA was there for BFN. There was also the Black Chamber of Commerce and others, and the Black Opportunity Fund. And I was sort of pollinating ideas between the groups, and I thought, even better than joining each of these groups individually is for them to come together. To properly lobby the government for, hey, can you not just like dry up all your funds on these initiatives as soon as the Liberals are out and the Conservatives are in, or the wind blows eastward all of a sudden?
Yes, I love that point, because that's another thing too. We have to have people talking to all sides of the political spectrum, because in Canada we have like more than two parties. So all sides, we should have people. We have a lot of people in the Liberal Party are connected to the Liberal. We should have people connected to the Conservative Party, because they're going to be in power probably next election.
I think really just relying on each other and being supportive of each other, not dragging each other down, just really trying to be constructive and supportive and lobby together. I think, white papers, research, ESG reporting is huge. and barely any companies do it. I think only 15% of companies filled out their ESG reporting.
Yeah, a lot of
they're already like woke ones are doing it, right? But how do we get everyone to do the ESG compliance stuff? But a final note, I guess, is, if you could share a success story of a woman entrepreneur who successfully navigated some legal challenges. For instance, there's some really fire Black women changing the world. Someone I think to look out for is Fearless Fund. Have you heard of Fearless Fund?
Oh yeah, and they went through that thing in the U.S.
Yeah, so they're currently under scrutiny over hey, let's throw out anything that benefits Black people, and then try and sue people that are trying to benefit Black people, because affirmative action is now out the window.
Okay,
but
so I get what you want.
What's your? Are you optimistic about Fearless Fund coming through?
Yes, I am actually, because the fact that they were even sued is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because they came into being because we weren't getting a fair shake. They came into being to correct a wrong. It's a remedial measure that they're bringing in, and now you're trying to reverse the thing that they're trying to correct. So I think eventually, in the States, it's a little bit more political. Everything is politicized there, but I think eventually they will get to the right answer. I have faith in that. But in terms, now that I comprehend your question more, great Black female entrepreneurs, I know many, and I see them all the time, like at the BFN, yourself. Very impressed with everything that you've done please just tell them, because I don't know everything, but so I want to give Laura some time to say what she's doing and what she's done, please.
Part of my secret sauce has been aligning with other people in the Black entrepreneurship ecosystem. As someone that's mixed race, I grew up in Toronto. My dad's Irish Canadian. My mother is she immigrated from Jamaica in the 60s. So she came here by herself in her 20s and built up a real estate empire on her own back. She's so inspirational, and damn, that must have been hard in the 60s and 70s. So she really paved the way for me to have an easier time. I was sent to the best schools, went to private school, had chess lessons and horseback riding and all these things to build resiliencies, and that I am entitled to everything here just as much as everyone else. So it really helps that I didn't so much have a chip on my shoulder. I grew up in a very predominantly white neighborhood.
And how was that?
But the thing with that was, I thought I was white because I was just, it was the air I was breathing, right? And I was the only not fully white person at school, the whole school. And again, that's kind of rare for Toronto, but there are pockets of Toronto that were like that. And going through life, I started to realize as I was working at different workplaces, because in student environments, you always find your people, it's more inclusive, but things get real once you get into the professional environment. And I fell into real estate finance, and it was run by a Guyanese person and his wife, Lisa, who was Jamaican. So it was actually the Black community that gave me a chance for my first real office manager position.
I love that.
And from there, I did experiment with other organizations. I worked for, a predominantly Greek company and some others, and I noticed a palpable difference in the cohesion, in the way I was treated and how I was othered, and things like that. And what worked was to really stay firm with my community, and it shouldn't necessarily have to be like that, but it's what worked for me, frankly, because there's a whole bunch of things that you don't need to explain. I don't need to explain why my hair changes from month to month. Dude, do you think I want to have that conversation with Joe White or whatever, who what, you care? You want to go get some cornrows? Get out of here, man. What is the point of this conversation right now?
And I know exactly what you're saying, because it is another way that they other you, because oh, this is so strange. No, it's not strange.
Don't touch my hair.
It's just not what you do.
Don't touch my hair.
But it's not strange.
Yeah, they just really highlight that about you instead of just taking you for all your brilliance and your great ideas. And the leadership at Matrix, Sean Allen and Carla Allen, they were so supportive of me to give me the spotlight and to pass the mic and give me speaking opportunities and not just say, oh, I'm the CEO, I should get the speaking opportunity, right? It's like, no, you're the COO, you should get that too. Or you should get a quote in the articles. And a major thing I did was to elevate my own personal brand on LinkedIn. And that's something that I really shared company-wide. And at the same time, I shared my strategy for elevating my personal brand on LinkedIn with everyone at Matrix, over 100 agents. I've trained over 100 mortgage agents. Amazing. Maybe 200, honestly. And so I have 30,000 LinkedIn connections. Wow. Sean Allen has 30,000 LinkedIn connections. Built up Carla's as well. Wow. So suddenly we just became ubiquitous. We were so big you couldn't ignore us. Amazing. We were so loud you couldn't not hear us. That's right. And so anyone that had something negative to say, their voice was deadened by the fact that we had so much third-party verification and validation that we were the best at what we do, that we were values-driven, ethical, and knowledgeable. So I think for any entrepreneur out there, I was able to pivot because I built up my personal brand. I could say, yes, I'm Laura, the real estate finance person, but now I'm Laura, the startup founder, and now I'm also Laura, the VC and startup ecosystem person. And I just take people along my journey and kind of keep them updated so they don't get confused.
Yeah, and I love what you said about building your personal brand, because that really is key when you're an entrepreneur. And for the exact reason
you might change companies. You can't be like, oh, I'm Matrix Laura, right? Like, yeah, I've been there 16 years. I'm Matrix Laura, right? But I'm more than that too. So that's the important thing is that, you have your loyalties and you have things that you do, but ultimately entrepreneurs, they wear many hats. They have massive interests in various things. And just because someone else is out there saying you can only be one thing, that's their limitation. It is not yours. It merely speaks to their own limitations on what they're capable of doing. Don't listen to them. Listen to people that are doing things you want to do. That's right. That's the only kind of people you should be taking advice from.
They can only limit you if you agree with them.
Exactly.
Don't agree with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Laura. You know what? You kind of reminded me now of my grandma in terms of your fire in your belly. And she was like that too. And now I remember that she was the inspiration for me going into immigration, because my grandma, back in the day, there was this famous kind of paralegal, Dudley Laws. I don't know if you ever heard his name. He passed away. And then equally or more so famous lawyer, Charles Roach. And my grandma knew both of them. And people used to come in from Jamaica and other islands, sponsored by my grandma. My grandma did not have the means to sponsor all these people, but everybody, sorry, she's passed away, so I can say this now. Everybody was her cousin, okay? And she got so many people in. And my mom used to be worried. And this was like way back, like in the 70s, right? And so my mom used to be worried. And my sisters told me that my mom used to say to my grandma, "Ma, you can't be sponsoring like the whole of Jamaica. You can't do that.
Watch me."
Right? What if these people, like, they don't have a job and da-da-da, and then what? They come to you. And my grandmother used to say, "You got here. Aren't you happy? Yes. Does Canada belong to you? Okay, no." That's right. Right? And she did it. And now these people, we keep in touch with some of them, like I still know some of them. They're doctors, they're nurses, they're lawyers, and they have my grandma to thank. Right?
Yeah, they do. And I think that's a brilliant way to really end it off. It's that, it's not that when more Black people succeed that there's one pie and that's less pie for you, right? We're talking about baking more pies.
That's right.
And we're talking about making it a norm that a leader or a CEO isn't some white guy. It can look like someone that looks like us.
Anybody.
And I think that the more that exists is the more that the younger generation will see the possibilities for themselves. And we could start to change the world.
That's it. I love it.
All right. High five.
High five.
Cheers.